I pressed my old navy blazer with more care than I used on my own wedding day. The fabric smelled like starch and stubbornness. My shoes shined so hard I could almost see my past mistakes in them. In my pocket, a red carnation, a small, hopeful thing I bought myself because I figured the father of the groom deserved at least one flower. I had paid for half that wedding, the band, the photographer, the ridiculous chocolate fountain that looked like it might start bubbling at any moment. Derek had said, "Dad, don't worry about it. I'll handle the invitations." And like a fool, I believed him. I just wanted to see my boy smile, to see him start his new life. So I showed up early, standing there like some proud old oak in my blazer and polished shoes. The place was beautiful string lights in the trees, soft music, people laughing, and the smell of roasted chicken in the air. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd done something right. Then Derek walked up. His face wasn't smiling. It was the same face he used to make when I forgot to pick him up from baseball practice 20 years ago. He cleared his throat, glanced at the security guard behind him, and said, "Dad, I'm sorry, but you're not invited." I thought I misheard him. I laughed that nervous, stupid laugh we old men use when our hearts split in two. But he didn't laugh back. He just adjusted his tie, eyes cold as the wedding ice sculpture behind him. And that's when I realized this wasn't some misunderstanding. My son truly didn't want me there. But oh, he had no idea who he was dealing with. For a full minute, I just stood there like a lawn ornament no one ordered. The music behind me was soft violins, maybe, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. I stared at Derek, my own son, the boy who once cried because I missed his school play, now treating me like I was the wedding crasher in a bad sitcom. Not invited? I finally said, half laughing, half choking, "You mean not invited today, or not invited ever again?" He sighed, like I just asked for his Netflix password. "Dad, it's complicated." "Oh, I see. Complicated," I repeated. "Like the plumbing after you tried fixing the sink, that one Thanksgiving." Even the security guard smirked before catching himself. Melissa, the bride, the future queen of cold stares, leaned in and whispered something into Derek's ear. He nodded, and I swear, it was like watching a puppet wait for permission to blink. "Dad, please don't make a scene," Derek said quietly. "A scene?" I laughed, holding up my hands. "Son, I paid for the stage. I think I'm entitled to at least a monologue." That earned me a few chuckles from the guests nearby, the kind of nervous laughter people give when they sense drama, but can't look away. I should have been humiliated, and I was. But somewhere under the embarrassment, something else started to bubble up, a stubborn, mischievous little voice that said, "You raised him. You can outsmart him." So I straightened my boutonniere, nodded to the security guard, and smiled. "All right, son," I said. "I'll leave." But I wasn't going far, not before I made sure my money got its full entertainment value. I walked away slowly, pretending to be calm the way you walk when your shoes are on fire, but you don't want the neighbors to notice. The grass was perfect, freshly cut. Each blade probably cost more than my lunch. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, whispering, "Isn't that the father?" Like I just escaped from the gift table. Halfway down the path, I stopped by the catering tent. The smell of roasted chicken and gravy nearly made me weep. The chef, a big guy with a mustache that looked like it could hold secrets, gave me a nod. "Sir, you're not supposed to be here yet," he said. "Oh, don't worry," I replied, patting my jacket. "Apparently, I'm not supposed to be anywhere." He laughed. "Family drama, huh?" "Wedding bingo," I said. "You just filled the uninvited dad square." We both chuckled, and for the first time that day, it felt good to breathe again. I grabbed a roll off the platter when he wasn't looking, considered a partial refund, and kept walking toward the parking lot. But as I looked back at the glowing lights, the laughter, the people clinking glasses, something twisted inside me. I wasn't angry anymore, just hollow, like a man who built a house only to find someone else living in it. And yet, beneath all that, a strange thought flickered. If my son didn't want me there as a guest, maybe he'd have to deal with me as something else. I sat in my old pickup, watching the wedding from a distance, like some budget version of James Bond if Bond had arthritis and a thermos of lukewarm coffee. Through the windshield, I could see the guests mingling, champagne glasses sparkling in the evening light. Everyone looked so happy. Everyone except me. I took a long sip and muttered, "Half the bill, none of the buffet." "Nice trade, Carl." "Yes." I talk to myself now. It's cheaper than therapy. As I sat there, a golf cart zipped by carrying Aunt Patty. Bless her nosy heart. She spotted me instantly. That woman could find gossip in a monastery. "Carl, what on earth are you doing out here?" she yelled, clutching her hat. "Apparently, I'm the entertainment, Patty," I said. "They just forgot to give me a mic." She gasped, covered her mouth, and whispered, "You mean Derek didn't let you in?" "Not unless I sneak in dressed as the cake." I sighed. Patty wasn't the quiet type. Within minutes, I saw her marching straight toward the reception tent, shaking her purse like a lawyer with evidence. I knew that look it meant trouble. And for once not mine. I chuckled, leaning back in my seat. Maybe I didn't need to do anything. Maybe the universe had just hired Aunt Patty as my personal chaos manager. But I should have known the universe never gives refunds without a twist. 10 minutes later, I saw the unmistakable silhouette of Aunt Patty storming out of the tent, followed by 2 bridesmaids who looked like they'd just witnessed a Category 5 hurricane in heels. Patty's voice carried across the parking lot like a church bell that had opinions. "Carl, you listen here, your son's got some nerve. I told that boy, you can't cut out your own father." And you know what he said? I braced myself. "What?" He said, "Aunt Patty, please lower your voice." I nearly spit out my coffee. "That's it?" "No." Then he said, "Dad makes everything about himself." "Well," I said, "he's not wrong. I did pay for half the event, including his sense of entitlement." Patty slapped my arm, half laughing, half furious. "You're taking this too calmly, Carl." "Oh, I'm calm on the outside," I said. "Inside, I'm building a PowerPoint titled, 'Why You'll Regret This, Son.'" We both laughed, that ridiculous, shared laugh people do when they're standing on emotional quicksand. For a moment, it helped. Then, as the laughter faded, I looked at the tent lights again. Somewhere in there, my son was giving a speech, and I wasn't part of it. Patty sighed. "You want me to go back in and throw the bouquet at his head?" Tempting. Very tempting. But I shook my head. "No, Patty. Let him have his perfect little picture tonight. Tomorrow, reality will come knocking, and you can bet your pearls I'll be the one holding the doorbell." The next morning, I woke up still wearing the same blazer. My boutonniere looked like it had survived a small hurricane. Ironic, considering Aunt Patty was the hurricane. The house was quiet, except for the coffee maker groaning like it hated its job as much as I did. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a pile of unpaid bills and the leftover wedding receipt folder. Half the payments had my name neatly printed next to them, Carl Thompson. DJ, catering, floral arrangements. I'd basically financed the fairy tale I got kicked out of. I picked up my phone and saw no messages. No thank you, no sorry, not even a "we'll return your cooler." Just silence. That kind that rings louder than any music. I should have been furious. Instead, I just sighed and poured another cup. "Congratulations, Derek," I muttered. "You married rich in-laws and divorced your conscience in one night." But then, my eyes fell on the one thing that always made me grin the receipt for the open bar tab. I remembered Melissa's father bragging about how he'd cover it. Except, he never did. The final payment hadn't gone through yet, and it was still under my name. That's when a small, wicked smile crawled across my face. Maybe, just maybe, it was time for a little budgetary adjustment, father's version of a wedding gift return. By noon, I was sitting at the bank with my reading glasses halfway down my nose and the receipt folder open like a legal exhibit. The teller, a young woman named Ashley, with a polite smile that said, "I'm too young for this soap opera," asked, "How can I help you today, Mr. Thompson?" I leaned forward. "Let's just say I'd like to amend a transaction. You see this charge for the open bar at Willow Creek venue? She typed something, nodded. Yes, it's pending. Good. Let's make it unpending. She blinked. You mean cancel it? Exactly. Turns out the groom rescinded my invitation, so I'm rescinding his tequila. Ashley tried to hold her laugh, but failed spectacularly. I don't think we have a code for that reason, sir. Then write it under emotional reimbursement. She giggled. Then, bless her heart, helped me process the cancellation. As I walked out, I felt lighter. A small, ridiculous victory, yes, but mine nonetheless. Driving home, I imagined Derek's face when the venue called to say the bar bill was reopened. I could almost hear him. Dad, you can't just... Oh, but I could. Still, a part of me ached. Revenge, even small, bureaucratic revenge, doesn't fill an empty seat at your son's wedding. But sometimes, it buys you enough peace to enjoy lunch. And that's when my phone buzzed an unknown number. The kind that smells like drama before you even answer. I picked up the phone, half expecting it to be a telemarketer trying to sell me a new roof. Instead, a crisp female voice said, Mr. Thompson, this is Willow Creek Events. We have a small issue with your son's account. I smiled before she'd even finished. Ah, yes, the open bar. I imagine the champagne suddenly lost its sparkle? She hesitated. Well, yes, the groom seems surprised that the final payment was withdrawn. Withdrawn? I said, feigning confusion. No, I'd call it reallocated. The man didn't invite me, so I assumed the party was not mutually binding. There was silence, then a tiny professional laugh. That's a first for us, sir. I'm a trendsetter, I said proudly. First father in history to fund half a wedding and still get escorted out before dessert. When I hung up, I could almost hear Derek's voice in my head, panicking as the open bar shut down mid-toast. I pictured his friends holding empty glasses, Melissa glaring daggers, the band awkwardly playing something sober like Amazing Grace. I didn't wish them misery, not really. But poetic inconvenience? Oh, absolutely. That evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset melt behind the trees, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Peace. Not triumph. Just quiet, steady peace. Until, of course, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Derek, and I had a feeling the show was just getting started. The screen lit up. Derek, incoming call. I stared at it like it was a ticking bomb. I could have ignored it, but where's the fun in that? I let it ring twice, took a slow sip of my tea, and answered in my calmest, I'm retired and unbothered voice. Dad, he barked immediately, why did you cancel the bar payment? They stopped serving in the middle of our toast. I smiled. Oh, you noticed? I thought maybe you were too busy uninviting people. Dad, this isn't funny, he snapped. Well, Derek, I said, I wasn't laughing last night when Hank the security fridge escorted me out like a leftover casserole. There was a long pause, the kind where you can hear someone realizing they've stepped in emotional quicksand. Then he said, quieter now, You embarrassed me, Dad. I almost laughed. I embarrassed you? Son, I got rejected by my own investment. I heard movement on his end, probably Melissa pacing behind him, whispering damage control strategies. He sighed. You didn't have to do that. Oh, but I did, I said. Because sometimes life gives you no seat at the table, so you repossess the tablecloth. He groaned. Can we talk tomorrow? Sure, I replied. Bring your checkbook. I'm charging emotional rent. When I hung up, I burst out laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was either that or start crying. And laughter, at my age, is cheaper than therapy and bourbon. The next morning, I woke up to a sound I hadn't heard in years, Derek knocking on my door. Not calling, not texting, knocking. For a second, I thought it was the mailman bringing another reminder of my bad investments. But no, it was my son, looking like a man who just lost an argument with karma. He stood there in his wrinkled suit, tie crooked, hair half a disaster. I didn't say a word. I just handed him a cup of coffee like a referee handing out a yellow card. He sat down at my kitchen table, the same one where he once built Lego towers and spilled chocolate milk. Now he looked at the table like it might sue him. "Dad," he began. I shouldn't have said what I did. "Which part?" I asked. "The part where I'm not invited? Or the part where I apparently make everything about myself?" He groaned. "Both. All of it." Melissa said. I raised a hand. "Ah, there it is." The classic Melissa said. "Son, if she told you to jump off a pier, you'd ask if there's a catering option." He cracked a smile despite himself. I could see it, the kid I used to know, buried under pride and wedding debt. "I was just trying to keep things simple," he said. "Son," I replied, "nothing that starts with a guest list and ends with a marriage license is ever simple." He laughed, then short, awkward, but real. It was the first honest sound between us in months, and for a brief moment, I thought maybe this story wasn't heading for tragedy after all. But then he said something that made me choke on my coffee. "Dad," Derek said, rubbing his temples, "Melissa thinks we should take a little break from seeing you for a while, just until things calm down." I blinked. "A break? What am I? Your gym membership?" He sighed. "It's just, she's embarrassed about what happened with the bar. Her parents were upset. Everyone was talking." "Oh, poor them," I said, tapping my cup. Imagine being slightly inconvenienced while sipping champagne I paid for. The horror. "Dad, please." "No, you please," I shot back. "Please tell me how I raised a man who can look his father in the eye and say, 'You're not invited,' and then call the next day asking for understanding." His face dropped, guilt creeping in like bad lighting. "I messed up. I know I did." "Good," I said, leaning back. "Step 1. Awareness. Step 2. Groceries, since you just drank my last bit of coffee." He snorted that same laugh he had as a kid, the one that could melt a glacier. For a second, we both smiled like nothing ever broke. Then he said softly, "I don't know how to fix this." And for once, I didn't have a joke ready. I looked at him, my son, my own stubborn reflection, and said, "You start by showing up next time before the door closes." He nodded, quiet. I could tell he heard me maybe for the first time in years. But little did I know, next time would come sooner than either of us expected. A week later, I was back to my usual morning routine: burnt toast, local news, and talking to the toaster like it was a coworker. Life had slipped back into its quiet rhythm, until one afternoon there was a frantic knock at my door. It was Melissa. Hair in a messy bun, mascara smudged, wearing what I assume was her "I regret everything" outfit, sweatpants, and panic. "Mr. Thompson," she began. I don't know how to say this, but Derek's in the hospital." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" He fell off a ladder fixing the gutter. I told him to hire someone, but he said Dad would have done it himself." I froze, halfway between anger and disbelief. "So he didn't invite me to the wedding, but he invited me spiritually to the injury?" She gave a shaky laugh, then bit her lip. "He's asking for you." I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my coat and keys. Halfway to the car, I realized I was still wearing slippers. I didn't care. At the hospital, I found him sitting up, arm in a sling, looking sheepish. "Hey, Dad," he said. "Hey, acrobat," I replied. "Next time you miss me, try a phone call instead of a somersault." He chuckled weakly. "I deserved that." "You deserve physical therapy," I said, "and maybe a discount on ladders." But then he reached out his good hand, eyes watery. "I'm sorry, Dad. For everything. I was stupid. And for once, I didn't crack a joke. I just took his hand, squeezed it, and said, 'Son, you finally made a list I'm happy to be on.'" Outside the door, I could hear Melissa quietly crying. And for the first time, I didn't resent her. I just felt done with bitterness. But life, as always, wasn't finished with me yet. Over the next few days, I became a regular at that hospital, brought him food, cracked jokes at the nurses, and even pretended to inspect the vending machines like I worked there. Derek hated hospital oatmeal, so I smuggled in real pancakes from Marty's diner. One morning, the nurse caught me mid-bite. "Mr. Thompson, those aren't on the diet plan." "Sweetheart," I said, "neither is heartbreak, but here we are." Derek laughed so hard he nearly pulled his four loose. It felt good, the kind of laughter that patched up something deeper than wounds. We started talking again. Really talking. About Mom. About the years we wasted being proud and stupid. About how love can turn into distance when no one wants to blink first. I told him, "Son, family isn't a perfect photo. It's more like a soup. Sometimes it's too salty, sometimes it's cold. But you keep stirring until it feels right." He smiled and said, "You should write that down." "I did," I said. "On your bar tab." He rolled his eyes, but I could see that sparkle of forgiveness starting to glow again. Then Melissa walked in, with a nervous smile and a bouquet. "Mr. Thompson," she said softly, "I think I owe you an apology, too." I looked at her, then at Derek. "Well, this is turning into a full reunion tour." She laughed, and for once, it wasn't forced. For the first time since that awful day, it actually felt like family again. But old men like me, we don't trust happy endings until they're written in ink. And the ink was about to dry in a way I never saw coming. A few weeks later, Derek was out of the hospital and back on his feet, literally wobbling, figuratively humbled. He and Melissa invited me over for dinner. I nearly fainted when I saw the text. I thought it was spam. When I arrived, their house looked like it was auditioning for a cooking show. Candles, napkins folded into triangles, and a smell of something suspiciously burnt but enthusiastic. "We made roast," Melissa announced proudly. "Oh, good," I said, sniffing the air. "My smoke alarm's been bored lately." We laughed. The tension that once filled every room between us was finally thinning out, melting like butter on toast. Derek poured me a glass of wine from the same brand they served at the wedding. "Thought it was fitting," he said. "Fitting? Yes." I nodded. "Just don't ask me to pay for this bottle, too." Dinner was messy and loud and human. We talked about small things, his new job, her gardening obsession, my ongoing feud with the neighbor's lawn flamingo. Somewhere between the laughter, Melissa looked at me and said softly, "You know, it was never about not wanting you there, Mr. Thompson. I just didn't know how to handle big feelings without making small mistakes." I smiled. "Join the club, dear. Lifetime membership. Comes with free regret and half a bottle of antacids." For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like an outsider in my own family. I wasn't the uninvited father anymore, I was just Dad. And as I sat there watching them clear plates, joking over who burned the bread more, I realized sometimes the best way to win isn't with revenge or pride. It's with patience and maybe a good sense of humor. But fate had one final punchline to deliver, and it came the very next morning. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on my door, softer this time, almost shy. When I opened it, Derek and Melissa stood there, both grinning like kids who'd just stolen cookies. Behind them, on my porch, sat a small table covered in flowers, coffee, and of all things, a wedding invitation. My name was written in bold letters, perfectly centered. I raised an eyebrow. "Either you two are getting married again, or the printer's very late." Derek smiled. "We're renewing our vows next year. And this time, Dad, you're the first one on the list." I looked at the invitation, then at my son, taller now, older, but with that same goofy sincerity he had as a boy. I couldn't help it. I laughed until my eyes watered. "Well," I said, "I'll come, but only if I get to approve the playlist and supervise the bar tab personally." We all laughed, and for once, it wasn't the kind that hides pain. It was warm, honest, whole. Later, as they drove off, I sat back on the porch with my coffee, watching the sunrise paint the sky gold. You know, life's funny. You spend half of it trying to teach your kids what's right, and the other half learning to forgive them when they forget. In the end, I didn't get revenge. I got something better perspective. And maybe that's the real gift of getting old. You stop keeping score and start keeping moments. Because the truth is, I was never uninvited from my son's life. I was just waiting for him to remember where I belonged. Write in the comments how old you are and where you're watching from. I love knowing where these stories find a home.